I am Chester Dunham, and this is the Dunham Report, a marketplace of ideas, of information for labor, civil rights, and other issues of social justice. Tonight, again, we do have a very informational show for you all, the viewing audience. Wes, how you doing tonight, man?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. I spent most of the day sort of watching off and on the going away service for the President George Bush. I keep getting those two boys mixed up, father and son with the same name.
With the name, yeah, you might be right.
But I learned a lot that he did for the country, and certainly was a well-known man of God, and raised a good family. And you could, one thing I said to my wife as I looked at them today, I said, you can tell a lot about a family when you look at them as a group. I said, now, it's hard for me to pick out any drunks or addicts. I said, I'm sure they got some, I'm not sure of that. I said, but on and on, looking at them today, it looked like they were a pretty solid family.
Let me come back to that. I was doing some of the same thing too, observing the funeral, or the centered around the events and what's happening, and talking about the Bush Senior, Bush Junior, and Junior, and grandkids and everything else. But we do have tonight, what we're going to do to you, the viewing audience, we're going to try to go over some of the things dealing with the election. And we're going to talk about some of the things we have previously talked about. And we got some other information that we want to share with you, the viewing audience, and hoping that you will get a whole lot out of what we are talking about. And we will be talking about future elections, because we got so much stuff to do, and we're going to talk about that. But we can continue, Wes, coming back to the funeral session or whatever. Yesterday morning, I think when, or was it yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, I think I was talking to you earlier, and then you told me you had picked up on the session, and I started watching it too. I think yesterday you was watching part of the one I didn't see. Mm-hmm. What I did was I observed, just happened to was watching TV and see where the plan was there waiting on the session. And then to see all of these, see the session, and and it was interesting to see how many people being involved in the funeral. I mean, it was a whole lot of them, and from military on down to different duties and responsibility that different people had. I noticed even the pallbearers. And if you notice the uniforms and what have you, so they had all branches of military involved in that, right, and all of this. And I'm sort of a critic too, because I was looking to see how many blacks being involved versus white. I look at that too, because it's something you can learn from, but just look at it. Well, I think they had two pallbearers, which they had 8 total, and then the additional one, the person, which was 9. And I think, if I'm not certain, I think it was 2 African American. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I didn't pay a lot of attention to that, in the sense that I figured that they had soldiers at each stop that played the same role. Mm-hmm. So the 8 that carried the coffin in may not have been the 8 that left Houston with him. You know what I'm saying? So when I started looking at what you were talking about, okay, my wife and I said that we got 8 pallbearers. How many blacks do we have? How many women do they have? And et cetera. And then I reminded her that, wait, you got to understand that when they started out in Houston to bring him here, they had pallbearers. They got pallbearers when they arrived at Andrews. They had pallbearers when they left Andrews. But they may not have been the same group. But when I say group, may not have been the same individuals. Mm-hmm. But there are people who play those roles for the military.
Yeah.
And we have to remind ourselves also that this was a new generation that was passed on. I did not expect to see a lot of black people, but I saw a lot of older white men that I recognized that had been a part of the government. Now, one of the things that I noticed that I was saying is that if you were looking for changes in God, you did not see it. But what I did not sense, and maybe I just don't understand everything, I did not sense a lot of antagonism toward anybody at that funeral. And so they told me something, but we did notice that there was an inordinate number of whites represented there. And that was because during the time when he was president, white people was in charge of everything.
Another thing that I noticed too and heard them talking about, and that was Republican, Democrat, and the different presidents and how their administration was during the time when they were president. You learn a lot from that. Bush 1, which is the one that they funeralized today, they're going to take him back home and they're buried. But anyway, from the offset, here's a situation where a guy 18 years old went into the military and being had to learn right away being an Air Force airplane pilot and piloted this plane. And I guess he was dealing with one of the planes that had more people on because he was talking about his crew or something. He was right.
I think he had 2 people.
And then that plane was shot, huh?
He had 2 people.
Oh, okay.
2 crew members, I believe.
Okay, all right.
But they didn't make it out.
They didn't make it out? No.
Well, see, I didn't really get the understanding, but from what I can tell, is that the pilot has to turn the plane in a certain direction so that the people who were his cargo mates could escape. So I don't know whether he thought he didn't do it right or whatever, but I know for a long time he was concerned that maybe he had been at fault for not those people living. But actually, I think that had to do with a lot more than we think. But my input was that what I saw today is Carter, a veteran, President Carter.
Yeah, but I wanted to finish talking about.
But I want to bring something up here because
if Carter was what?
Carter was a veteran. Okay, and I looked at all the other people, all the other presidents sitting along there, and I said to myself, the one that we funeralized today, he was a soldier type person. And you look at them, you look at all the people who sit on the front row, who looked like they were out of place.
Well, automatically, the president now, 45, was out of place.
He looked like a lost pimp.
Right. Well, let's come back to that. Okay. But let me go back to the Bush one, in the incident that happened. Was that over Pearl Harbor, somewhere in that area?
It was in the, not over Pearl Harbor, it was in the Pacific. They were trying to take back an island from the Japanese.
Okay, well, I do know
one of the communication islands.
Well, I think when they was talking, I could be wrong, but I think when they were talking that what he did was, I guess when the plane got shot or something, caught a fire, that he made sure that, like you said, being the pilot, he made sure that the first thing he did was his crew got out of there. They put the life jacket on and the parachute, I guess, or what have you. And from what I was seeing, I could be wrong, that because they was rescuing different individuals off different planes, and as they hit the water, and I think Bush crew had survived. I could be wrong, but I know what he did. He was, and I was wondering, but just like you said, he was the last person, because that's the pilot would be the last one that leave the plane. Yeah, and then he came on, and he hit that water, and he went under, and they finally rescued him and picked him up and what have you. But it was just that age and stuff like that. He did a lot, and then you went further and you look at, because we're talking about him now, and his administration, he did a lot of different things under his administration with color-wise. He did some things that, and some building some other things that he put in place under his administration that we're dealing with today that surpass a lot of different people. And all of these guys that there today, as they talk about them, Clinton and Carter and
Obama
and Obama and Bush 1 and 2. Got some things in place and did a lot of good things. Beside from what this 45 in there now and then did nothing, and getting some praise and what have you. But he need to learn from these other folks, so we can come back to now what you were saying a few minutes, but out of place, because I was looking at and observing them as they be sitting there and line up. Now, before this incident happened today, they were talking that they was wondering how this one's going to go off, because this would be the first time that he would be in the presence of Miss Clinton since there's other stuff, since the election back there. And every day, every time you twittering or doing something, he holding but in jail and all these other kind of different things that he be talking about.
And you know,
and so they said his staff or the people around him would have to be talking to him a great deal. So I wanted to kind of notice that to see how you might react.
Well, I'm
coming back to you now.
I thought that, you know, I really felt sorry in a sense for Donald Trump and Mrs. Trump, because, you know, they just looked out of place. They have a body language and everything just told me they were out of place. I think George Bush, the second Bush, the funeral out his father's day, I think he caught them by surprise by actually going over and shaking their hand.
Yes, and talking.
And saying a few things. But my thing was that as I watched them, you know, Obama, I don't believe I ever saw Obama look to his right. Okay. But he was sitting next to Miss Trump.
Yeah, he was.
Now, this is very interesting. I don't know if you caught this, but when Bush was shaking people's hands on that front row, he actually gave Mrs. Obama a mint piece of candy.
Yeah.
Did you see this?
No, I didn't see that.
When he went there to shake her hand, he reached in his pocket and shook her hand like this and put a mint. So the guy on the TV said, "Did you see what George Bush did? He gave Mrs. Obama a piece of candy. That she and Mr. Bush, I'm talking Bush too, are very close as friends." And so he carried that on the day by carrying. Evidently, he knew from past experience that she liked mint candy, so he gave her one. But what I'm trying to point out is that you have to be careful what you say about people, and you got to be honest. I don't think people care. But one thing they said that Bush one was not concerned too much about the criticism as long as it was fair. That he never took it to the next point that this president has taken to. But I just thought that there was a contrast that I wish that we could make sure that our kids in school got a chance to see this. Now, these are the sort of things that people need to be aware of. When I was in school, if something like this happened in 1957, 1958, 59, my elementary teacher would have said, "I want you all to watch the news tonight. I want you all to come back tomorrow morning and tell me what you saw." And there was time when there was some other stuff going on in the Korean War and stuff like this that she knew about. But when something came up on television, telling us about that, she wants to see that. So I'm saying today we had an opportunity to really school our kids, but I think that, you know, we want to be careful about what we tell them to do. But I just felt sad for the Trumps today. They felt just out of place, and I don't know how I felt. If I felt, now I don't mind going in knowing that people are going to be mad because I criticized them, but I don't want to go in for people to be mad knowing that I've been lying about it. There's a big difference between criticizing people and lying about them, and I thought that I just couldn't imagine for them sitting there.
Okay, let's go into the program. I had noticed in the day's paper, I think it was in the day's paper, it said the GOP swept Georgia runoff. And we're going to come back and talk about that, but when we talk about that, let's go back to a couple of our previous shows in the runoff in different areas where they had runoff. The primary was over and they had several runoff in various states. And since we are all over the place now, we did a show talking about the state of Michigan, the state of Mississippi, and Maryland, Baltimore area. And let's start out like we did then, talking about Michigan. We talked about the person, and that was a U.S. Senate seat. And we talked about the incumbent who was female, who was in office for several years. She was doing a banged up job. And but still yet all of these people were, had opposition and stuff. And they had a young man, his name had a person last name. Name was John James, I think it was. But anyway, he was an intelligent black ex-military and a lot of other things. Real smart, did a lot of things, but he was Republican. He represented I guess, from that party in the runoff, he probably was the person who won the primary over there. So now he was in the runoff. And interesting because we did and talk about some of the information on the show that we talked about. And I even had a chance to call some relatives of mine and some friends of mine that I used to live in Michigan at one time, and to find out whether they was up to date on what's happening in that election. And they told me they sure was, and they was. So they wasn't fooled by race or color. That's one thing. Because African American in these elections, it seems like they are the most intelligent voters out there. They vote on issues, they vote on all the key things that you should vote on. When a lot of Caucasian, and I hope they'll wake up one day, a whole lot of them does, but it's a lot that we got out there just vote on race. And they vote most time against the people who are going to help them and vote for the enemies. And so in the end, the incumbent won that race in the state of Michigan. You have anything that you want to share on that Michigan election? Because we talked about it.
I think we have the same issue that, as I was saying earlier, for us as black people to win in any place, we are going to have to depend only upon ourselves. We can no longer depend upon, as I said, moderate whites. It'd be nice if they would come over with us. And I don't believe we can really depend upon any other people to help us out. That when it's all said and done, we are going to, people use us as a race and as people whenever they can get something done. So I'm saying that as we go through life, we got to understand in the past, yes, indeed, people of all races and colors have helped us out as black people. But now we have made some major gains. And what we find out that the people who were helping us pull the wagon, and all of a sudden looked back and saw that we're no longer on the wagon. There are other people on the wagon, but we are now also here pulling it. And when you see a pull the wagon, you want to be in charge of some things. So a lot of things is the fact that we no longer just riding on the wagon. We're now gotten off the wagon. Other groups of people are getting on the wagon, and we're here pushing it, or we're pulling it. And so now the people who used to pull the wagon look around and see us gaining on them. Now they go back home and they stop it. They stop pulling the wagon and get on the wagon to slow it down. So what I'm trying to point out is that we keep asking for coalitions that's going to help us win. Nobody's going to help us win unless we decide to win ourselves. When we decide we're going to win ourselves by making sure that we get out and get all of our people in line, then we will have all the help we need. We will be helping ourselves.
Okay, and then you made me thought of, the more you talk, sometimes you think of things. And you go back to, let's just say, this is 2018, which in November, give or take, in the areas, is still in November. And here's a situation where 1864,
Okay.
with the Civil War, and during that period of time, and especially the Union soldiers, the more you read about, that's why history is so important. the more you read about things and learn about things, here's a situation where most of your Union soldiers, which came from up north and other places, were abolitionists. Abolitionists really were friends to slaves and blacks. They was on that side. And it seems like today, we don't have, I thought of things getting better a lot of time. It get worse with race and people. Because here's a situation where some of the folks now still want to stay back in those days, like they're still fighting a war, Confederate and back in those particular times. And you can see all over the place. I think I read in the paper a couple of days ago or more. And then here's a situation where we still have to fight the system and elected officials who represent the people who should be for what's right, but fighting for all of these these monuments and other kind of things which represent hate and all of this kind of stuff, that we should be over all of this kind of stuff. And they're still worshiping these folks and wanted to use your tax money and let it stay up in those places. So I see these federal judges and a lot of different judges making them change, outlawing these kind of things. And the elected officials who you vote for every day fighting against it, and those are the people that people don't understand. A lot of time, that's why they need to check the history and the record of people who you vote for, and why you vote for them and should vote for them and why you shouldn't. And we're going to come into it. We can talk about Mississippi. We can fall right in line with that, with our next thing. Instead of saying it now, we can bring some of this kind of stuff when we come to the candidates in Mississippi. You have anything else you want to say?
Well,
Michigan, but we can go into Mississippi next.
What I was going to say is that what we have here is we have the people are understanding. People are fighting for what they believe is being taken away from them. They don't see us as having equal access to everything that they have. In other words, when I say everything they have, I mean that every black teenager has a right to an education. Every black teenager that graduates from high school has a right to a job. It doesn't mean that that person is going to take your job. It means that they have equal access to acquire it. But see, what we have now is that we got so many people, and this is not only the younger people, but these are middle-aged white men and white women who are now seeing, as I said, a lot of gains from black people looking over their shoulder. For instance, now I give it to you, if you look at the city of Savannah, they got a lot of black employees in the city of Savannah. There was a time, I don't think, when they had that many. But as time goes on and on, as we climb higher and higher, remember we had the mayor of the city before? When we got the mayor of the city, we had the president of the United States, a lot of white people are looking back over their shoulders. They did not realize how closely we were. And all of a sudden, they were pulling the wagon, and they wake up. So what I'm saying is that I know why the average, some of these white people are upset. I'd be upset also if I woke up one morning and found out that I now have to pick my own cucumbers and put my own tomatoes and cook my own dinner, wash my own clothes, or have to pay for it. I'd get mad too, because somebody has misled them to believe that they didn't have to cook their tomatoes, they didn't have to pick their beans, and they didn't have to wash their clothes, that someone else is going to do that for them. So a lot of the things that was coming on nowadays is that people were expecting that privilege would give them certain advantages. Now those advantages are being taken away, and they don't like the feeling. They thought that the black people who were rioting in the streets in the 60s and 70s, they had no reason to be in the street. All of a sudden we got people in the street that don't look like us, and they claim they have a right to protest because they think we are taking something away from them. So I can understand, Justin. If I thought you were taking my house away from me, I'd be upset too. Now I may have a wrong reason of being upset, but I'll be upset. But that's what's going on in these elections. People are voting their conscience. And when I say conscience, they really don't want to see us in charge because they are afraid. One thing that I saw today, and I said to Estelle, my wife, I said, honey, Obama did a bad thing for us. He woke those people up too quickly. They wake up and they see a black man sitting and his wife sitting next to the current president, wonder how did he get so close to power, or that he was in trouble, that he was in power. I said, what we're having is that the fact that he could become president for 2 terms woke up a lot of people in this country. So that's what's going on, Justin. People are waking up and realizing that we are closer than they thought.
Well, you know, the great man, Dr. King, warned us about some of these times, just like way back when Frederick Douglass, in a different tone, might have phrased it somewhat different, but their message was the same. When Douglass was talking, and he warned us about there were those of us who want crop without plowing up the ground. We want it, but they want to make the sacrifice to do these things. He said, we want the rain, but here come the thunder and lightning. We don't want that thunder and lightning. And all of these things Douglas was telling us about, but he said it's a sacrifice. You've got to make a sacrifice. He said, power conceived nothing without it a man. It never did, and it never will. And Douglas also tells us that we may not get all that we pay for, but we will certainly pay for all we get. And then Dr. King, told us, then Randolph told us, in between there, he said, at the banquet table of nature, there are no reserve seats. He said, one gets what one can take, and you keep what you can hold. And if you can't take anything, you wouldn't get anything. And the only way you're going to get it is by organization and organizing and coming, like you were saying, coming together and putting some plans in place and doing these things. So the great one was telling us about these things, and coming back to Dr. King, and he used the little story coming from Rip Van Winkle. That was one of the key things he told us before he left this earth. And he told us about literally wide awake, but we are sleeping. And he said, please don't wake up, don't go to sleep. And he told us about Rip Van Winkle. Other words, he said, Rip Van went up in the mountain to take his nap. And when he left the park, that it was a picture of King George II in the park. And he went on up and he slept for 20 years. And when Rip Van woke up, because he was sleeping all that time, and the King was telling us don't fall asleep like Rip Van. And he came back down and he observed, he done slept for 20 years, and Rip look over there and say, might have said to himself, so I know it was a picture of what's going on here. It's a picture of King George II. Now they got a picture here of somebody else, which was George Washington, the first president of the United States. And he come to find out later he had done slept for 20 years. He had done sleep through a revolution. So Dr. King was telling us, in a sense, like you saying now, don't go to sleep. Wise up, wake up, stay awake. And right now, we're going to talk, coming from this election and stuff, we need to wise up and wake up. But let's go into, and then we come into Mississippi. Go ahead, say what you.
Well, what I wanted to say is that one of the things that that we have to wise up to is that other people are defining our needs in our community. There's one thing that I often say that I hear preachers, and they think it's pieces of doing that. Talking, for scriptures, they use scripture to say, if a man does not work, he does not eat. And I know that's in the New Testament. But my issue is that everybody who is not working is not just doing it because they don't want to. I think of very seldom, like we think about all for instance, if a person is hurt and cannot work, they're only going to help them for so long.
That's right.
Those persons lose all of their underlying support. And we see those people on the street and we think that they just are nobody because they've had circumstances. And so I believe that God said yes to the person who does not work, he doesn't eat. But I believe he's talking about people who have the circumstances and the wherewithal to do so. I don't think he is expecting any sick person or any person who's come a fall of the system.
You're so right.
That we should not take care of them. So what I'm pointing out to is that we have allowed those people in charge to decide that they can just take a whole group of people that may have disabilities and all kinds of other things that is not relevant to the eye. For instance, a person who has mental illness, you cannot see that unless you experience it. So every time they see somebody who's not doing a job, they think that person is just doing it because he can't handle it. No. When we as a group of people have to decide that we are going to differentiate between those individuals in our community that have legitimate needs that we need to make sure they're taken care of, and also deal with those people who don't have it. But we cannot allow them to continually group all our people together and say that all of these people have problems and they are no good. Because I'm going to tell you like it is. God is watching us, and I read the scriptures, try to read scriptures every night. Now, I don't always understand what I'm reading, but if I read it often enough, something will come to me and what the Lord is trying to say. So what I'm trying to point out is that right now and in this day and time, while we're trying to get ready to vote, we need to get our community together and understand that everybody in our community has value. I don't care what their situation is, where they have been, they have value, and we need to share that. But I always ask myself when I'm talking on Sunday, what would Jesus say about this situation? How would he handle it? And I always ask myself, so what are you preaching that Jesus would be preaching? And my thing is that you got to take care of all the people. You got to understand what their needs are. And then those who don't want to work and can work, you need to deal with them. But those people who want to work and can't work, we need to take care of them.
That's for sure. And here in the state of Mississippi was a heated election. Mm-hmm. Here's a situation where a poor state, a state where a lot of farmers at and a lot of other different things. Mm-hmm. And here's a situation where the farmers need help, need a whole lot of help. Some situation here the other day, I think they were saying that their crop was in the field and a whole lot of other different things that was happening where they need power. They need to make sure that the sale is they get their money for their stuff that they plant.
Soybeans.
Yeah, and all of these kind of things. And now here's a situation where we are dealing with tariffs and dealing with the different countries, and especially China, one of the main contributors dealing with export. And this sort of stuff, because you're exporting your stuff here overseas in different places. But here's a situation where the person who was running for office, again, she got had a record that they looked at, a lousy record. Her record had to have been lousy because she couldn't get 50% of the people to vote for her. The first when the primary came about.
That's right.
The general election, which was the primary. She couldn't get 50% of the people. That's why it was a runoff of about 3 individuals, and I think she got about 37% the first time around. And now the second time around, it was 2 people then running, which was an African American and her. Mm-hmm. African American had a record for helping and a record for doing so much stuff that he was a congressperson for I don't know how many years, 10 years or more, and this record is out there for white to see and black to see, and he have helped so many people in the state of Mississippi. And then he turned around on the side of that and was through the Clinton administration served as the president of agriculture or something, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So now here's a man that got all the connection dealing with agriculture and all these kind of things. All the farmers and things should have been the main one trying to tear the poll down to vote for him because he's going to help them. Now, I talked to some folks from Mississippi, that live here, but in Mississippi at this particular time, and she was watching television, and she was telling me that here go some white farmers and white business people on the radio and on television telling their friends about voting for Epstein, because he was the one that's going to protect them, especially farmers and all these other kind of things. And then the outcome of the election, they turn around again and vote for the enemy.
Well, let me just say how I put it. You know, God gives you just about everything you need to succeed. But He expects you to do a little bit of work for it. Remember I told you, if you can work and you don't work, you don't eat. So my issue is this. God gave those farmers in Mississippi good ground down in the Delta. He provided them with rain and lightning and thunder and everything they need to grow their crops. He gave them seed and everything. Now that his crops are in, He expects them to do their job, which is to tell Donald Trump to get off their backs.
Right.
Now, if people don't want to tell Donald Trump to get off their back, as far as I can see, God has done everything He needs to do. He gave them rain, He gave them good soil, He gave them good climate and everything, and they had soybeans galore. Now they're standing around with soybeans and nothing to do with them. They got a president in Washington that decided that as long as he can get his Trump towers and he can eat his caviar and all the stuff, and he can play at all his golf things. Have you ever seen him go out to the Mississippi Delta and play the golf?
Yeah.
You've seen him. So my thing is that the people in Mississippi, like many people, have decided that they're willing to pay a price, but they haven't paid enough of a price. Because my belief is that this is where the parable says that if you don't work, you don't eat. This time, you don't use your brain, you don't eat, because God has given them everything. That guy was standing in the peanut field with all of these peanuts just growing like crazy. And I said, he has all the things that God promised him, but he has not taken it upon himself to make sure that Donald Trump and his fellow people that are elected in Mississippians to do the right thing. They are so caught up into making sure that you don't get your piece of pie, Chester, that they're willing to throw the whole damn pie out before they share it with us.
Now, and then here's a situation where these people are a lot of damn hypocrites. Mm-hmm. Because when he was running as the candidate to get the nomination for the Republican Party, this lady Highsmith and what have you, mm-hmm. They couldn't stand him. They didn't support him, didn't do nothing with him.
No.
But now all of a sudden, here she is trying to get him in there, to use him, and well, they're both using each other to come in there, and she bowing down to him and all this kind of stuff. And then all the other things that she did, you know, dealing with racism in schools and all these, the history point out itself that what her record and everything else, and they're still tearing the poll down and support this lady.
Well, you know what, Justin? Remember I was talking about Fannie Lou Hamer? One of the things they said in Fannie Lou Hamer's thing which surprised me, which I didn't say too much about as I was looking at it today, but they pointed out that the Democratic Party in the South was not all that crazy about the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And so that's what I'm trying to point out here about this point is that there were and still are major schisms in what they call the Democratic and the Republican Party. When you get to Mississippi, and I want to say Georgia and Louisiana and those places, what we call the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they really have labels. But actually, when you get behind the scene, the Republicans and the Democrats, whites, in those states are all the same. They're same friends. In other words, we don't really have a Republican and a Democratic Party in the South as we think. I believe that they are just all one group and they just playing the game. They got some Republicans and they got some Democrats, they got some conservatives. And they were saying that, if I recall correctly, they said in the piece with Fannie Lou Hamer that they tried to seat the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and I believe it was Lyndon Johnson that was not willing to let them unseat the entire delegation from Mississippi. And so they were talking about some of the issues around that. What I'm pointing out is that I'm not so sure that there's a clear bubble between the people that call themselves Republicans and those that call them Democrats. The real connecting thing is that they're all white.
But let me say this to the viewing audience. Whether you live in Mississippi whether you live in Georgia, whether you live in Chicago, New York, no matter where you live, it is some changes going to be made and being made every day. And this election the other day, it's a whole lot of changes were made. Now let us look at the state of Mississippi, where this lady had in the primary, like we said, about 36, 37% or something like that. The max of the voters are the people who came out and voted for her. So now, when all of these other percentage and people turn around in the runoff the other day, he had a situation where Mike had 20-something% of the vote. But the change was, he didn't win, but he came close. She did not think, if you count the votes, she had about maybe 3 percentage points ahead of him. He ended up with 46 or 47% of the people who voted in the state of Mississippi. He had about, at least, let me see, 27, 37, 20, 30, 40, 47% more vote than, from the runoff to the, from the primary to the runoff. And second time around, Obama did pretty good in Mississippi. Not near as good as he should, but anyway, and I think Mike had more than him in the election the other day. So progress is being made, and that's why we got to continue to talk about it. That's why we got to continue study the issues and look at these elections and make sure that we're on the top of it.
One of the important things that I think that we have to do is that, and I think Stacey Abrams has kind of set the table for this, is that the fight is never over. I myself used to get used to the point that, hey, okay, so we lost the election, we'll wait till the next election. No, what I'm hearing from Stacey is that, no, there's work to be done so that we don't have to fight the same battle every 4 years or every 3 years. And I think that we have to come up with the idea that, hey, there are processes, suppression of voters and whatnot, that we need to be about our business during the time between these elections. We cannot say that, well, I voted, but I didn't win. No, you have to go back and make sure that your vote counted and that there were other people who were thrown out. Because I tell you right now, I felt very good. The fact that she lost, but she did not submit to the fact that it's all over. There are other factors that we need to clean up.
Well, we're going to end up talking about the state of Georgia. I just wanted to hit on these other little primaries, and that just hit, and then we're coming into Georgia and Florida. But let's hit Maryland a little bit and then move on to that. The reason I wanted to talk about Maryland because they had a good candidate right in that state running for office. All the credentials, everything. He had everything that anybody would look for in a candidate. Whether you're white, black, or other colors, it doesn't make any difference. One of the best candidates you can find. And then the state of Maryland, which is supposed to be, as they call it, a Democrat state. Now, how in the world a Democrat state, as you call it, and they're going to turn around in this election and end up voting with the best candidate and end up voting for a Republican? You hear me? What you want to say about that? I just can't picture it.
Well, you know what? If I go back to my history during the Civil War, I always thought that the people in Maryland wasn't sure they were in the North or the South. I think there was an argument between
they were
confused whether they were a northern state or whether they were a southern state, if I recall correctly. But you know what just as I get back, everybody keeps hearing me say this, but I keep telling you, President Obama caused us some problems. Now, what's the guy name? The guy that you're talking about used to be the president of NACP, is that correct? So
Yeah, you're right. That is correct.
So every time a black person begins to rise and could possibly put their hand on the White House scale, white people rise up and give them out. They do not want to see another Obama. It's coming anyway. But so when I see this guy like that, when people see Stacey Adams, when they see
so close to D.C.
so close to him, so what I'm saying is that people are seeing qualified blacks now that are running for office is going to be looked at. One of the issues that we talk about is that this guy, what's his name? Was it not? Is it Cousins? No.
Who then?
The guy who passed the NAC.
Oh, you're talking about in a minute.
But anyway,
Jarvis, Ben Jarvis.
No,
Ben Jarvis.
The guy who was head of the NACP before that, the last one. He was here during Troy Davis's funeral.
Oh, you're talking about Ben Jarvis?
Yeah, okay. I don't think so. Anyway, they looked at this guy and they knew from the beginning that he had the quality to be president of the United States. Oh, yeah. But if they never let you become statewide and don't let you become congressional wide, then they keep you away from doing these types of things. And every time they see a smart black person raise their hand, they said, "Oh no,
that's too close."
That's too close. So in a sense, we got to understand that.
And it's a funny thing you said that because Obama, daddy was black and his mother white, and Ben Jarvis, his I'm trying to think. I think his
being jealous. I think it is.
Yeah, I believe his mother was white versus and black. I know he had a mixed parent. He was But I think his daddy was black and mother white, vice versa. Anyway, so I guess you might be saying that him and Obama rhyme so close right there together. So
they see the issue is now they understand that these people. First of all, I think that the Democrats and the Republicans are still trying to figure out what and how did Obama organize so nationwide so they could bypass their checks and balances. Because you see, one of the reasons why we're not winning in Mississippi and other places is that, as we know, we have not figured out all the little what I call speed bumps that they put on the road for us. And we learn where the speed bumps are, we'll get there. So every time they see somebody who has gotten over certain, they may have 4 speed bumps in the road for us, okay? When they realize that they see somebody who's gotten over 3 of them, they call out the heavy gunners then. But that's what I'm saying is that when we get down to the point that we got a lot of people making great progress, then they want the people to stop.
Well, we're going to talk about, going to move into Georgia, and one of the key things going to help us, because we are educating ourselves right now, and when we end up educating the people to make sure that we correct some of those things out there they're doing. And one of the key things is that redistricting, which that they are doing with us, and we're gonna straighten this thing out, this redistricting thing, because they in a way they chopping the vote away from us that way. The other one is gerrymandering. That's another one. All fall right together, and then the census is now too counting. So we got to make sure that we work on that and the count and all of these kind of things. These are things that we will have to be working on now in the future to make sure that no matter that they're going to be able to steal nothing no more. Now, we do know that all these different places, that's what they did, to steal these elections. We know that. Here's a situation where the previous Secretary of State, who want to become governor and now is our governor, this person was, and you're talking about Stacey. Here's a situation where she out there along with many more of us dealing with voter registration and trying to educate the people on voter registration and all these other different things. So we out there trying to deal with the Voting Rights Act that Johnson signed and put into law. Now we have to fight all of these hurdles dealing with especially Section 4, because that's the one that keep us from getting to Section 5. Section 5 would eliminate all these other problems, which one of the Bushes and all them signed these things into law that will help us. And here go the Supreme Court the other day put a block up dealing with Section 4. So these are the type of things that we're going to have to be dealing with and working on and making sure that all these hurdles and things are out of the way to make sure that it wouldn't be no stealing of election, that we wouldn't have to worry about this stuff in the state of Georgia. So I said that to say this. She out there fighting and the rest of us fighting to make sure that everybody's vote counts and everybody will have the opportunity to vote. And here go a man who took this office and won the governor, who was guarding the hen house door,
Yep.
and put every stumbling block in the way to try to make it law, to take away the meaningful thing that we are trying to do to move all those hurdles out of the way. They get there the alphabet of your name and all of these other different things. So that's just about the same thing you're dealing with. The bubble, the marbles and the soap and all this kind of stuff. It's some of the same thing, just coming at you in a different way. And now you've got the situation where this guy who was, I'd seen in the paper the other day, his pronunciation of his name says, is what, who is now
Ratzenberger.
Yeah, he is now the
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State. And this is what he said. Now he said he was a former state lawmaker from the suburb of Atlanta in that area, defeat former Democrat Congressman John Barrett. And let's talk about that a minute, because a few years ago when when they ran in the general election, and it was the two Senate seats came up in that election, and here's the situation where Jack Kingston was throwing his hat in the ring and was running for that Senate seat to represent the state of Georgia. And I told him, like I told you, that I don't think he was going to win, and the reason why, because he's known all around this area right here, in this neck of the woods of this territory where a lot of land space and less people. And around Atlanta is where the bulk of the folks are, and that's where you're going to lose. So that's what happened there. So now this thing could have backfired on John Barrett here. So before I just say that I don't think they cheated on him, it's just a situation he had.
He was not from Atlanta.
Yeah, but right. But it's a situation he had, and I think that knowing people, because this guy was in political arena for a long time. And he around that whole bulk of areas up there where a lot of folks is up there, and we're talking about a statewide election. And I think that's where he lost that election there. And then this other person, Edenton or whatever, Chuck, he won the re-election of the utility service commissioner.
But one of the things that I wanted just to make sure, I don't know how much time we got left, but I wanted to talk about what is happening in the state of Wisconsin, because this is something that I feel is going to start happening. The people of Wisconsin seem to have done two things. They elected a governor Democrat and a couple other statewide members as Democrats, but they let the Republicans hold on to the assembly. And the Republicans are writing laws now to take away the powers of the governor and the other people at the top that are Democrats. And as I recall, I said that I thought that is something that we have to be careful that does not take place under Donald Trump's administration. that they may feel the need to try to pass laws that will keep us from, even if we exercise our rights and are successful, to make sure that we don't have the authority to enforce it.
They were talking, just like you said, Madison and some more of them people talking about this today, and that these are the loopholes and the slip thing that they'll try, and that's why we got to make sure that we're on the top of everything, to make sure that we don't let these darn things happen. We got to stay on the top of all of it. We can't play around. Cannot play around anymore. We got to be on top of things.
And I think that we got people like Abrams and the guy in Florida and the upstate Mississippi. I think what is happening is that we may actually be frightening our white Democrats in the South that usually support us, because they realize that we have some very capable people in the states of the South. In the southern part of the country, we have some very capable people, and that when we will keep working, people learn more and more that they can win. As a matter of fact, you see, some of the things that they talked about the day at George Bush's funeral was that he took people under his wing and pushed them along. So now if we get some people that will take some of our people on their wing and push them along, we'll go a lot faster and a longer time running. But we just got to be careful about the issues that they write in the law, so that once we win, we cannot enforce them. That's a very dangerous situation.
Well, that's why, and what we're gonna do a show on Georgia and Florida, just strictly these two states, the bordering states, and talk about the governor's race in those two states. Well, dynamite candidates on the Democrat side, you don't want nobody no smarter there, are top notch in everything, smart. Both of them. The guy down in Florida and Stacey here in the state of Georgia. And another thing, like you mentioned earlier, that she is sitting on the side of the street or this or that and say, well, they beat me over here, I'm gonna take my marble or take my hat and I'm gonna go home. No. She out there fighting and continue. In the situation, she may end up, before the governor thing come back again, she may end up running for the Senate seat, because that particular seat will come up in the next 2 years. That particular seat, because the other one wouldn't come up, but this one will come up. And we can tip our hat to the result of the election the other day in the midterm. This probably the percentage-wise, the highest number of people on the Democrat side, whether you black or white, that percentage was top. We got more people elected in this race the other day than any race in the history at midterm. And then you had a lot of, that's another thing, hats off to female, and especially African American female, hats off to them, because they did a heck of a job. And you're going to see some different changes in the Congress.
Oh, talk about Congress. I take my hat off to the congressional people from not taking a sucker punch from the Republicans to try and replace Nancy Pelosi.
You got it. Say it.
You see, Nancy Pelosi is just as cutthroat as any of the white boys. As a matter of fact, what I saw today was something very interesting. Power, you talk about those power when they see it. When they had the congressional delegation represented, they had Mitch McConnell and his wife. Then they had Ryan and his wife, and Nancy Pelosi and her husband. The one thing I said when I saw that, I said, you know what? We can say all the kind of crap we want, but Donald Trump is just seeing his nemesis right here. So I was glad that when people did not take the advantage of him and say, listen here, do you guys realize that Nancy Pelosi is the most dangerous thing to Donald Trump as you can put. So I'm glad that we got a lot of new people in Washington as congressional people. What I'm hoping now is that they will be as activists as they were when they got there, but they will know that they don't know everything, and they will be willing to listen to get some people going some places. Because I believe that we are beginning to see a very good active year in Congress with Nancy Pelosi in charge. And I think that, what's it, Akeem Jeffries? He's a young guy that I think has got some real potential coming along. This is the kind of person that the white people who don't want another Obama will make sure they put some roadblocks. You best believe they're looking for anything on any rock for this guy already. Just like they were looking, what's the guy from Minnesota? The brother from Minnesota, the Muslim brother. But anyway, what I'm saying is that Akeem Jeffries is one of the leaders of the party. You can best believe that they're looking for things on him that they can find them.
Viewing audience, you have been watching the Dunham Report, where you, the community, come first. We hope that you enjoyed this show tonight and you got something out of it. We try to educate you and bring you up to date on a lot of things, and you're going to be seeing a whole lot more of this sort of show in the near future. So what we want you to do is to keep us in the future, but subscribe. Make sure now that you subscribe to our channel. Like us on Facebook, then follow us on Instagram. Make sure that you and tell all your friends to tune into the Dunham Report. Good night.